All right, hey there everybody, and welcome to the next part of the Blood Reaper series. Here we're going to be painting a large NMM sword. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I did a little bit of experimentation here as well. So I'd like to do at least one of these a series where I'm learning with you guys. I'm trying something new, and you guys can kind of see that process. Let's go ahead and jump right in. As you can see, I just was testing the paint on the sword there earlier, and what we're going to do is we're going to build up from this very, very dark base, essentially starting to sketch in and get an idea of, where we want our light to be and how we want the sword to be keyed. And on the topic of sketching, the next video series when we work on a bust is we're going to kind of tackle a couple things at once, and we're going to tackle sketching as well as busts. Of course, here I have a lot more paint on the brush. I'm just kind of spreading that paint around. That's always something that you can do. You can deposit a little bit of paint, and then you can just spread it all around until it, I like to call it, until it exhausts itself, until it runs out. And again, just kind of figuring out here where we want our lights to be. This is nice. It's very relaxing, this part of the process, because you really can't make an error. You can't really mess it up. And that's why sketching is very, very nice, is that, it's very loose. We're just getting an idea, and we're not really bound to what we're putting down. So if I wanted to come back and fix it, if I wanted to shift it, all I'd have to do is use a little bit of thin down black. You can also just continue working the process up and continuing to refine the shapes and the highlights and so on and so forth as you go. And if I remember correctly here, I didn't use the palette cam here, but we're only going to be using a couple of colors. We're only going to be using Maggot White from Reaper as well as Nightshade Purple, and we get this really lovely kind of purplish, green gray. It's a really interesting tone. I really enjoyed using it. And then at the very end, we're going to be using some titanium white. So I thought I'd let you guys know what those colors were. Also, I want you guys to let me know if you're enjoying this format with the voiceover. I've really been enjoying doing these voiceover videos. It gives me a lot more control over, when I'm painting, all I have to do is concentrate on painting. And then when I am doing voiceover, all I have to do is concentrate on, talking to you guys about what I'm doing and why. So let me know what you think in the comments. I really want to hear your thoughts, just so that way I can either continue doing this or not continue doing it, or mix it up and maybe do a little bit of both. And we're just still sketching here. You guys have been asking for more detailed, more extensive stuff, and so I figured that I'd do the same thing here. And let me know if these videos are too long as well. I'm trying to find that balance between length and content, where sometimes, in these videos I feel like I'm repeating things over and over again, but then I'll get questions as to like, hey, what are you doing on the other side? And so I just want to make sure that I'm giving you guys the information that you are coming here and looking for. So this is a second layer, just refining it a bit more. Honestly, this isn't even mixed up at all. This doesn't have any additional white or maggot white mixed into our gray. And you can do that a lot of times. You can thin down one layer and apply it, and if you're seeing that background coming through, that means that you can use that mix of paint one more time, and really get better coverage, and you can build layers and highlights just like that. It's a really great tool to learn and to teach yourself. You can get a lot of contrast just out of one mix or one color, if you control the thinness of it. This is very early in the process as well. And you can see as well, some of the transitions aren't super clean. Some of them are pretty sharp. And again, always just remember, always there's something that we can fix, always something that we can manipulate with layers and glazes as we go on. I would say the big priority is always going to be that you really want to create an intense contrast first, because we can always blend that out afterwards. Just a little bit of time and patience, and knowing using the right tools and the right tricks, and we can get anything, smoothed out fairly easily. And here we did mix up. And again, I want to apologize for the camera. I'm still on that learning curve with the camera. I've been fiddling with it and getting feedback from other people, and they're helping me out. The quality of these is just going to keep going up. But until then, I hope you guys are enjoying. We were finally filming these in 4K, and it's been really nice to have that level of detail to these recordings and having the dedicated studio set up to actually accomplish this stuff. Just refining the shape here. But really focusing on that one area. That's always something that you can do as you go. If you don't like the shape of something, if you don't like the direction that it's going, you can wait for the paint to dry and kind of hit one area specifically a couple of times. Just using those layers, using that stair-stepping method. In some of the bigger areas here, you can kind of see that we're kind of reflecting the light through the center, and that's something that'll happen with metals that are flat and large. And if you can angle a cookie sheet or something like that you might have, that's a big flat metal object in a single light source, taken into a room with a single light bulb or something, and play around with the way that the light works, and you'll find that generally there are depending on the reflectiveness of the metal, you'll notice that there's 4 different things that'll happen. You'll get a gradient to the right, you'll get a gradient to the left, you'll get a highlight that goes down the center of the object, or the whole object will be illuminated evenly. We're kind of taking advantage of that, and I'm trying to experiment here just to maybe get some kind of new light source, and we're just having fun. You can see me adding it right there. We have our big main highlight and then a secondary one kind of up top, and that can happen if there's multiple light sources. You're gonna kind of get them going, scattering across the surface in different ways, and we're trying to show that, and we're just trying to add a little bit of complexity, because this is such a large sword. We don't want to just paint this the same way that we would if it was a 25 millimeter one. So here I'm adding 3 light sources, and again, this is something where it was an experiment. I think it would have been better if I just had done 2, but even with that being said, the sword did end up looking quite reflective. Took a pause there to look at what you're doing. It's always important to take a step back here and there and just breathe and look at what you're doing and say, hey, I like where this is going, I don't like where this is going. Even more importantly, give your eyes a rest sometimes. If you've been working on something for even a half hour, 20 minutes, it's okay to set it down, look at something else, check your messages. Even if you have like a mug or a cup that's a different color, just look at something that's a different color for a little while. Let your eyes adjust. You can really exhaust your eye muscles. Just going through all those little highlights and adding it in. And again, this whole time, we're going to be gradually adding just a little bit of maggot white until we get really far into that process, and we are only adding pure titanium white. We're not quite to the pure titanium white part yet, but we will definitely be getting there before too long. Again, here we mixed up just a little bit more and we're just kind of coming back through. We're not using a standard layering technique where we're pushing. We're kind of doing this stitchy back and forth type of thing. And, this is what I talk about other times, when I'm streaming or that kind of thing, is layering isn't bound by just that pushing and lifting technique where we're pushing and leaving that bead. You can also kind of swish it back and forth and stitch back and forth. And the important thing though is that those stair steps, the changes, those incremental changes are being left essentially for that transition to occur gradually over time. And so you can do it that way. I mean, you can use your finger, you can use a toothpick. It doesn't really matter as long as those transitional steps are left alone and left to to essentially create a gradient, which is going to look nice and smooth to our eyes. Again, testing the paint on my thumb. I think we mixed up a little bit here. And you can see we're just getting smaller and smaller and smaller with each of those layers that we do. And that's the beauty of layering, and is that you can, the more layers that you do, the smaller that area gets and the faster it becomes to work. And that's one of the reasons that I do like layering. And again, you can do this with any techniques that you want. Layering is just, I'm just kind of on a little bit of a kick of layering. So if you guys feel like I'm using that too much as well, please let me know. I can always change it up. I can, we can do some wet blending. We can do some feathering. That's just kind of the mood that I'm in, I guess. You can see there are some areas still, especially like the big curved surfaces on the edges of the blade where I am still pushing it. If you can use the pushing technique effectively, then use it, because it's very reliable. But if you have areas where you're trying to do kind of a change or a shift in the on the surface, kind of like the flat sides of the sword, then yeah, you can use that stitching. You can see me utilizing it right there. So this is one of the good things about working in grayscale, and also one of the bad things is that it's great because it gives us quite a playground to work with, and we're really reducing the amount of variables because we're only working with black, white, and gray. The bad thing is that it can become just a touch tedious. It feels like you're kind of doing the same thing over and over and over again, and sometimes that's great because it's like meditation. Other times it gets a little bit dull because there's not a lot of color or life into it. But the color and life comes later when we start to glaze it, and we're not going to get into that in this tutorial. I really just wanted to show you how I created the gradients and how I did the NMM on such a large surface. These are very, very similar techniques that I used on the Barbarian a few years back. Where we're really defining these large surfaces, and the sword needs much more information. The other thing that I'll be doing here slightly as I go, and you can kind of see me doing it right now on the teeth, is that we are shifting the shape. We're editing the shape, and that's always something that you can do as well. I would say it's very important to do because you want to make sure that those shapes are defined the right way. This is also why we're using grayscale, is that if we need to make a change on the fly, if we really just are going and going and going, and then our instinct or our gut is telling us, or maybe we get some feedback that goes, hey, the shape here isn't isn't right. It doesn't look like that would be a natural way that this would be reflective. We can come back in with some of our darker grays or even black and go in, or whites, and we can fix that. We can push and pull the paint to our will. But yeah, it's just a very steady march right now of adding our highlight color, adding our maggot white. Always testing, and again, you can see we're getting much lighter here. We're still not quite at pure white, but getting there. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this series as much as I enjoyed making it. Just kind of while we're in the middle right here, I wanted to thank you guys so much for your support. It's definitely been a wild few months with getting the studio built, you know, all the issues with YouTube, and then of course baby Theodora was just born, and for all of you guys who have stuck with me, thank you so much. It really means the world, and now that we're in a bit more of a stable place, the content's going to be much more regular, much more reliable, and I do apologize for the kind of stunts and growth that I feel like the channel has had. So always trying to do my best to do the best by you guys, because you guys really are my #1 priority here. We're getting really fine with our highlights. You know, we're getting very close to pure white. We may even be using, you know, almost pure maggot white here. And you can see we're stippling. You can always use stippling. It's one of those techniques where it doesn't matter what you're doing, you can use it. There's very few. I feel like the only other technique that's kind of like that is glazing. But stippling has that range, maybe even just a touch more. You just have to be very careful. Yeah, mixing up just a little bit of white and just same thing. One of the problems that I do see a lot with people when they are first attempting NMM, and this is something that very regularly comes up, you know, in Photoshop feedback or community Photoshop feedback, is that when people are attempting NMM, especially for the first time, or they're really trying to dive into it, is that there's two main things that'll happen. Number one is that their highlights aren't bright enough. A lot of people don't realize that you really need to go super bright, like pure white out of the pot. Like if you can get artist acrylic, use the paste right out of the tube, because it's gonna pop out those colors so much more. There needs to be that contrast between bright and dark. And that's kind of, speaking of dark, that's the other thing that happens is it's NMM and reflective surfaces are kind of have a yin and yang to them. You know, without the light you can't have dark, and without the dark you can't have light. And it's really a balance between those two. And so just make sure that you're using that full range, and you're not using half of it. Very important. And again, you guys know my philosophy as well on this as well. It's better to go to an extreme and be able to back off of it than to not go far enough and fight your own work to get it to the point that you wanted to earlier on. And it's again talking about kind of just using this basic range of blacks, whites, and grays. We have that opportunity to really push it without a lot of consequence. But if we get further into the result, we start adding more color, more variation, and then we get to the end and we're like, whoa, this isn't right. We lose a whole lot of options. So here we glued the sword onto the miniature, and we're just kind of coming through here, with some very thin, it looks like maggot white or even pure white, and we're starting to smooth this out just a little bit, and really, refining the shapes, refining the texture, and all that good stuff. So, and again, in this tutorial, we're not going to be glazing. That wasn't something that I had actually captured on camera. But if I was going to, I would utilize the colors that would be on the base, and also on the backside that would be on his cloak. So on the backside, we'd have some greens and, so on and so forth. And then on the front, we might have some blues or, some kind of sand colors. So, and you can even utilize colors that aren't super present, like the purple or the yellow or the red that are on the miniature, and that way it just ties the whole miniature into itself, essentially. The other thing that you'll notice here is we painted the hilt. That's actually going to be the next video tutorial that we're going to have. It's going to be the last one for the series, and it's going to come out next week. These two were kind of shot last minute, just because I was like, hey, this seems like something that would be cool to record, and because of that, we're gonna put them a little bit closer together before we get to the next main series, which is gonna be sketching in busts. And again, using pure white here. This is the part where we're using pure paste white, and we're being very, very careful, and we're also really being very bold with how we are placing it down. So this is where the magic happens. Really though, I've taught quite a lot of the NMM classes, and this really is where the magic happens. I'm half kidding, but when you get out that paste, when you get that really thick paint and you apply it, either in little dots or in very, very bold ways into the main highlight, it pops it all out, and it really, really makes it very, very clear that, hey, this is a reflective surface. This isn't stone. This isn't plastic. This is really, really, polished metal that's bouncing this light back into our faces. Being very careful here of the other metallic surface. These teeth are kind of tricky. They're the most intricate part of the sword for sure. And so we're just kind of working around all of them very, very carefully, making sure that they all have the proper highlights and proper shapes. Just really paying very close attention to what the sculptor has put down, so that we can use that as a template for our painting. And again, doing this on the front side as well. just working that white. Sometimes even out of the tube, it ends up not being as opaque as we want, and that's one of the issues with white, is that it's on its own, it's not an incredibly opaque paint, and so sometimes we have to do multiple coats like this, even if it's Schmincke titanium white. It definitely happens. Something else that we're going to be doing going forward, and I think you probably have already noticed this, is that we are no longer doing music during the videos. This is for a couple of reasons. A, so that we don't get any copyright strikes, so we don't really push our luck with the videos. Not that we had an issue before, it just makes it more convenient. And also, you can turn on your own music in the background, so you know, if you are not liking the lack of music, feel free to turn on your own. Just turn it down a little bit in the background. And again, really, I mean, here we're still really refining everything. This is a very careful process. This is a very delicate process, and sometimes it's better to do multiple passes than one big pass, just because it builds up layers, builds up texture, builds up. I personally think that there's kind of a literal texture buildup that happens, and it lends itself to this process a little bit more. It gives the white a little bit more luminance. Now just repeating the process on the back. Just kind of take note of how I'm holding the miniature. I'm really trying hard not to touch the miniature because he's really getting to that nearly finished process. The other thing that I don't know if we do it here in the video, but edge highlight. I edge highlighted the whole thing after the video. Again, you guys have seen me edge highlight a lot. If you have any questions on edge highlighting, come on over to the Twitch stream. Just one of those little things that makes NMM pop. And again, as we get close to the end of the video here, you know, just finishing this refining process. Next week's video is going to be on how to paint that hilt, and that's where we use a little bit of, I think it's coal black, white, and nightshade purple, and that's how we get that. And that's almost the exact same formula that I use to paint the sword for the barbarian. So, you know, we're just applying it to a smaller area. And I wanted to thank you guys all once again. I know I thanked you earlier for your support. It really means the world. Don't forget to spread the news about these tutorials if you are enjoying them. Please share, and happy painting. I hope you guys are having a great weekend, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.